My fiancée used me for my money for 2 years, but when I recorded her mocking me, I exposed her at a family BBQ, and now she's living in complete ruin. I'm 31 years old, work in commercial real estate, and what happened a few months ago still has me processing everything. You know, like I can't believe it actually happened to me. I guess you always think you're smarter than that you can see the signs of someone who's only with you for your money. But the truth is, when you're in love, or when you think you're in love, you're basically blind to everything else. I met Brittany about 2.5 years ago on a dating app, one of those normal ones everyone uses now, and I'm not gonna lie, at first she seemed perfect. She was 27 back then. She was fun. We laughed at the same things. We had good sex, and she seemed genuinely interested in me as a person, not just what I did for a living. During the first few months, we barely even talked about money. We went to normal places, we split the bill sometimes, and she never pressured me for expensive stuff or anything like that. My friend Eric told me I'd found a good one, and I really thought I had. Looking back, I guess the first signs were there from the beginning, but I was too deep in the relationship to see them. Like around 6 months in, she started casually mentioning things she wanted, like a designer purse or some expensive shoes, and I'd buy them for her because I thought it was nice to surprise her and make her happy. It wasn't anything crazy at first, maybe 300 or 400 bucks here and there, and I was making good money then, so it didn't seem like a big deal. She always reacted super excited, would hug me, tell me I was the best boyfriend in the world, and that made me feel good, you know, like I was doing things right. My parents died when I was 23. Stupid car accident that didn't have to happen, and they left me a decent amount of money that I invested well. With that and my work in real estate, let's just say I was comfortable financially. I wasn't a millionaire or anything crazy like that, but I had a nice apartment, a decent car, and I could afford nice things without having to worry too much about money. After a year of being together, I decided to propose because I honestly thought she was the one. I took her to a vineyard outside the city, had planned everything weeks in advance, had the ring which cost me like $8,000, a carat-and-a-half diamond that she had mentioned. She liked when we passed by a jewelry store once, and when I got down on one knee and asked her, she started crying and said yes, immediately. It was one of the best moments of my life at that point, honestly. We called our families, posted pictures on social media, the whole thing, and everyone was super happy for us. Brittany's parents, her dad who's a school teacher, and her mom who has a small bakery, seemed genuinely happy that their daughter had found someone stable. But after the engagement, things started to change. And when I say change, I mean they became completely different. Brittany suddenly wanted to upgrade everything in her life. First, it was her car. She said her 2015 Honda was too old and that she needed something better now that she was going to be my wife. I ended up buying her a new BMW, like $45,000, because she insisted we needed to project a certain image as a couple. Then it was her clothes. She said all her clothes were too cheap and that she needed to look better for engagement photos and for when we started planning the wedding. I probably spent another $5,000 on designer clothes for her in a month. And then there were the constant little things, like expensive beauty treatments, dinners at fancy restaurants she insisted on trying, weekend trips to expensive places. I started feeling a bit uncomfortable with everything, but she always had an explanation that sounded reasonable, like she wanted to look good for me, or that these were memories we'd make together, or that we only live once and we should enjoy it while we can. Wedding planning was when things got really crazy. Brittany wanted everything as expensive as possible. The venue she picked cost $30,000 just for the space, not including food or drinks or anything. She wanted a designer wedding dress that cost $15,000. She insisted we needed a specific photographer who charged $8,000. She wanted a honeymoon in the Maldives for 2 weeks, which was going to easily cost $20,000. Every time I suggested something more modest or reasonable, she'd start crying and say I didn't love her enough, or that we were only getting married once and this should be perfect, or that all her friends had beautiful weddings and she deserved the same. And I, like an idiot, kept saying yes to everything because I didn't want her to think I was cheap, or that I didn't care about making her happy. Eric had told me a couple of times that I was overdoing it, that Brittany was taking advantage of me, but I defended her and told him she just wanted our wedding to be special, that it was normal. The thing is, during all this time, she was still affectionate with me, or at least, that's what I thought. She told me she loved me all the time. We had good physical chemistry. We spent time together watching shows or going out with friends, and I genuinely thought I was happy with her beyond the money. Yeah, I spent a ton on her, but that was just part of taking care of her, right? Or that's what I told myself. I never thought it was all an act, that every I love you and every hug and every time she looked at me with those eyes and told me I was her favorite person in the world, all of it was completely fake. Everything fell apart on a Tuesday afternoon about 4 months ago. The door was cracked open and she hadn't heard me arrive because she was talking loudly and laughing. I was going to announce myself, but something in her tone made me stop, like there was something about how she was talking that didn't sound like the Brittany I knew. And then I heard what she was saying. She was talking to one of her friends, I think it was Kimberly, and she was literally bragging about me. But not in a cute way, like, oh, my fiancé is so sweet or I'm so in love. No. She was saying things like, oh my God, I can't believe it actually worked. I trapped this rich guy and now I just have to hold on until after the wedding and I'm basically set. She said I was a sucker. She used the word simp, exactly, and that I was so easy to manipulate that she almost felt like she was cheating. She talked about how she had researched how much my properties and investments were worth before agreeing to marry me. She said she just had to cry or give me puppy dog eyes and I'd buy her whatever she wanted. She laughed, like a loud cackle, and said I thought she loved me, when really she could barely stand having sex with me, but that it was a small price to pay for the lifestyle I'm going to have. I stood there in the hallway feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. My hands started shaking and I felt like I was going to throw up. Everything I thought I had, the whole relationship, everything we'd built together, was a lie. Completely and absolutely a lie. She had never loved me for a single day. I was literally just a bank account to her, an idiot she could use to have the life she wanted without having to work for it. And the worst part was it was working. I had given her everything she wanted and more, and she was there laughing about me with her friends like it was the funniest thing in the world. I took out my phone and started recording. I don't know why that was my first instinct. I guess some part of my brain knew I was going to need proof because this was so fucking crazy that maybe nobody would believe me. I recorded like 2 more minutes of her talking, saying things like, after the wedding she was going to push for us to buy a bigger house, because the one I had was too small for her taste, and that she was thinking about what kind of car she was going to ask me to buy her for her birthday next year. She said verbatim, and I remember this perfectly because it was recorded. Once we're married, it's going to be even harder for him to divorce me, especially if I get pregnant. So, I've basically secured my financial future for the rest of my life. When she finished the call, I left the apartment before she came out of the bedroom. I couldn't see her in that moment. I literally felt like if I saw her, I was going to explode or say something or I don't know what. I went to a Starbucks and sat there for like 3 hours just processing everything. I listened to the recording probably 20 times, each time hoping that somehow it would be different, that maybe I had misunderstood. But no, it was exactly as bad as I thought. The woman I was going to marry, who I had been about to give everything to legally, had never loved me. She didn't even respect me. I was a joke to her. Eric came to meet me when I texted him saying I needed to talk. I showed him the recording, and he was quiet for a long moment, and then said, "Man, I'm so sorry. This is fucking horrible." He helped me think about what to do next. My first instinct was to just confront her immediately and end everything. But Eric convinced me to wait a bit, to plan how I was going to handle it, so she couldn't manipulate the situation in her favor or make herself the victim with our family and friends. Because I knew her. And I knew that if I just broke up with her without explanation, she was going to make up some story about how I was the bad guy, how I had treated her badly or cheated on her or something. For the next 2 weeks, I acted completely normal with her. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, honestly. Every time she told me she loved me, I had to smile and say, "I love you too," when inside, I was dying. Every time she asked me for something or planned something for the wedding, I had to nod and go along with it when all I wanted was to yell at her and tell her I knew exactly who she really was. But I held firm because I had a plan. and that plan required her not to suspect anything until the exact moment. We had planned an engagement barbecue at my house for 2 weeks after I discovered everything. We had invited like 50 people, all our family and close friends. Brittany was super excited about it. She had spent like $2,000 on decorations and fancy food because she said it had to be perfect. I let her do whatever she wanted, even when she suggested we hire an expensive catering service. I said yes to everything. And during those 2 weeks, I also made sure to prepare everything for what was going to happen after. I talked to a lawyer, moved money around, changed passwords, basically made sure that when I broke up with her, she couldn't screw me legally in any way. The day of the barbecue came, and everything was perfect according to Brittany's standards. The weather was nice, the food looked amazing, people started arriving around noon. Brittany was there in her expensive dress, acting like the perfect bride, hugging me, introducing me to people from her family I didn't know, talking about our wedding plans. I kept smiling the whole time, even though inside I felt like I was on autopilot. Eric knew what was going to happen and would look at me from time to time like asking if I was sure, and I'd nod because, yes, I was completely sure. Around 3 in the afternoon, when everyone had already eaten and were drinking beers and chatting, I asked everyone for attention. Brittany looked at me, confused but smiling, probably thinking I was going to give some nice speech about how much I loved her or something. I stood in the middle of the patio with my phone connected to a Bluetooth speaker we had set up for music, and I said, "I want everyone to hear something before we continue celebrating." Brittany was still smiling, but there was something in her eyes that showed a bit of nervousness, like she knew something weird was happening, but didn't know what exactly. The audio came out super clear from the speaker, so everyone could hear every word Brittany had said. Her voice filling the entire patio, talking about how she had trapped me, how I was a rich idiot, how she could barely stand sleeping with me, how she was only with me for the money, how she planned to get everything she could out of me after the wedding. I let it play for like 3 full minutes. The worst parts, while everyone stayed completely silent listening. Brittany's face went through every possible emotion in those 3 minutes. First confusion, then recognition that it was her voice, then absolute panic, then she tried to yell at me to turn it off, that it was private, that I had no right. But I ignored her and let the recording keep playing until it finished. When it finally stopped, the silence was so thick you could cut it. Everyone was looking at Brittany with faces of shock and disgust, and she was standing there with tears running down her face, but they weren't sad tears, they were panic tears because she knew she'd been caught. I took off the engagement ring she had given me, because, yeah, I wore one too, and threw it at her. Then I held out my hand and said, "Give me my ring back, now." She started to stammer something about how we could talk about this in private, about how there was a misunderstanding, about how I was taking things out of context. But her own mother, her mom, walked over and told her, "Give him the damn ring back." Brittany tried to appeal to her dad, but he just shook his head with a look of total disgust. Eventually, she took off the ring, handed it to me, and I said very calmly in front of everyone, "The engagement is canceled, this relationship is over, and I want you out of my house right now." Brittany tried to stay, tried to explain, tried to get other people to intervene for her, but nobody did. Her own friends who were there, including Kimberly, who she'd been talking to in the recording, looked at her like she was a stranger. Brittany's family left almost immediately, her dad muttering apologies to me as they left. Some of my friends came over to give me pats on the back or hugs, saying they were sorry about what was happening, but that I'd done the right thing. Eventually, Brittany left, crying and screaming about how I was a monster for humiliating her like that publicly, about how I was going to regret it, about how I had ruined her life. The next few days were a mess. Brittany called and texted me constantly, like 100 messages a day, alternating between begging for forgiveness and pleading for another chance, and insulting me and telling me I was horrible for exposing her like that. I blocked her number eventually, but she found ways to contact me, made new social media accounts, used friends' numbers, even sent me letters to my office. In the messages, she said things like, she really did love me, that she was just showing off to her friends to seem cool, that she never intended to hurt me. But I knew it was a lie. Everything was a lie. Even now, she was still lying and trying to manipulate me. I found out from mutual acquaintances that Brittany's parents kicked her out of their house when they confronted everything that had happened. Her mom apparently told her she'd raised her better than that and that she was ashamed to call her her daughter. Her dad, who had always been super nice to me, told her he couldn't believe he'd raised someone so calculating and cruel. Brittany ended up having to move into a small, cheap apartment with a roommate because she couldn't afford anything decent on her own. She worked as an administrative assistant making like $35,000 a year, which obviously wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd gotten used to with me. About a month after all this, Brittany showed up at my office. I don't know how she got past building security, but suddenly there she was, standing in the lobby waiting for me when I came out of a meeting. She looked terrible, honestly. Like she hadn't slept well in weeks. She grabbed my arm and started begging me, saying, "Connor, please, just listen to me for 5 minutes. I made a horrible mistake, but we can fix it. I really do love you. Please give me another chance." There were people around staring at us, and I just wanted her gone, so I was harsh. I told her, "Brittany, you never loved me, and I finally accepted that. You need to accept it too, and move on. There's nothing here for you." She started crying, right there in the lobby, and I had to call security to escort her out. It was awkward and sad, but necessary. What surprised me was how quickly people abandoned her once they knew the truth. Her friends stopped talking to her, including Kimberly, who cut contact completely after the barbecue. People who had been part of her life for years basically ghosted her because nobody wanted to be associated with someone who had done something so awful. I guess it makes sense. Like, who wants to be friends with someone who's capable of that level of deception and manipulation? Part of me felt bad about how her life had turned out, but then I'd remember the recording, how she'd laughed while talking about using me, and that guilty feeling would disappear completely. About 2 months after ending everything, a guy named Austin contacted me through LinkedIn. Apparently, he'd started dating Brittany. She'd told him her ex-fiancé had been an abusive jerk who'd left her with nothing, and he wanted to verify the story before getting more seriously involved with her. I thanked him for reaching out and sent him the recording. He responded the next day, saying, "Thanks for the warning. I already ended that relationship, and that was it." Apparently, Brittany was trying to do exactly the same thing to him that she'd done to me, looking for another guy with money she could use. I wonder how many other guys she tried before she finally gave up. The last time I heard anything about Brittany was about a month ago. A mutual friend told me she'd moved to another state to start over because she'd basically burned all her bridges here. She had no family supporting her, no friends, nobody. And I guess she decided it was easier to start from scratch, somewhere nobody knew her story. I don't know what she's doing now, and I don't really care. I blocked any way she could contact me and asked my friends not to update me about her. The weird thing about all this is I don't feel as devastated as I thought I would. I mean, yeah, the first few days were horrible. I felt like a complete idiot for not having seen the signs, for having trusted someone who clearly never deserved it. But after a while, I started to feel more relief than anything else. Relief that I found out who she really was before I married her. Before I had kids with her. Before I gave her legal access to all my money. It could have been so much worse. Yeah, I lost probably $100,000 total, with everything I spent on her during our relationship. The ring, the car, the clothes, the wedding plans I had to cancel. But that's recoverable. My heart, my dignity, my ability to trust people. But that's harder to recover. But at least I'm not legally tied to someone who sees me as an ATM. I've started dating someone new about a month ago. Someone I met completely organically at a work event. It's different this time. More cautious, definitely, but also more aware of what signs to look for. Eric says, I'm being too paranoid now. That not everyone is like Brittany. And I know he's right, but I can't help being a bit more careful with my money and with my heart. This new girl, Rachel, doesn't know how much I make and hasn't asked. We split bills when we go out. She talks about her own career goals and how she's saving to buy her own apartment. She seems genuine, but the truth is I thought Brittany was too at first, so who knows? What I learned from all this, and I know it sounds cliché, is that money really brings out the worst in some people, and that no matter how much you think you know someone, there's always the possibility they're acting. I'm not saying everyone is like that. Obviously they're not. But there are people out there who see other people as resources instead of as human beings. And those people are very good at hiding who they really are until it's too late. I was lucky to find out when I did. Others aren't so lucky. Others marry their Britneys and don't find out the truth until years later, when there are kids involved in complicated divorces and a complete financial mess. I dodged that bullet. Now I'm 31, single again, a bit wiser and definitely more cynical about love, but it's okay, I guess. I still have my job, I still have my money, I still have my dignity. Brittany, on the other hand, has to live. With what she did, with how she hurt someone who genuinely cared about her, and with the fact that her perfect plan to secure her future blew up in her face in the most public and humiliating way possible. And honestly, I don't feel even a bit of guilt about how I handled everything. She deserved every second of that humiliation for what she tried to do to me.